So one of the Cronenbergs made a new movie. Was it Brandon?
Nope.
Was it David?
Nope.
Oh, which one is it?
Caitlin.
Oh, man, how many freaking Cronenbergs are there?
I don't know.
Well, this is Caitlin Cronenberg, daughter of David, directorial debut, Humane, and it is currently in theaters as well as on VOD for $6.99. And we watched it. I was pretty excited for this because, I like a lot of David's films. I've liked Brandon's films, and I was like, well, let's see what the daughter can bring to the table. So what is this one about? Well, this one is set in the near future where the planet has become overpopulated. Sound familiar? And resources are limited, and the ozone layer has had it, and they decide that they are going to have a volunteer program where you can give up your life to save others. I think the most notable first thing to say here is that this film is going to be divided for sure, just purely from a political standpoint. I think that this has a political motivation behind it, and it's going to be pretty obvious to anyone who's paying attention on what side of the aisle that this leans more towards, and that's going to turn off an audience immediately in these very divided times. So I think that if you are someone who is sensitive to political messaging or what you might see as propaganda, you might be turned off by this film. As someone who follows politics religiously, like myself, I don't discuss them on the channel at all because that's not what this channel is for. It was fine for me, even though I can see why others would be put off by it because everyone is upset about everything these days. But that even being said, even though I am kind of in agreement with a lot of what is being what the commentary is here, I just did not like how this film played out.
Yeah.
So even though I might be on the side of some of the messaging that they're trying to put forth, it's the way it is handled and the storytelling that takes place and how fucking unsatisfied you feel in the end, which might be part of the message, as Kaylee had said when we finished this. But my God, does this leave you feeling just so vacant and hollow inside, because you're like, really? That's the way this is gonna go? And I started like rifling off like, how could this end like this if this person's this and that and blah blah blah. I was like pissed off.
Yeah, I like the concept quite a bit of this movie, and I do agree with the messaging, but it is so upsetting and angering, and I do think that is part of the point.
Yeah.
Which if you watch the movie, you'll understand like what we mean by that. But the ending, I hated the ending because it, as you already said, it was so unsatisfying, and I feel like. But I am also like, I think that's the purpose. Like, I think it's supposed to be that way. But I really hated how it went. And I also think that there's some stuff that's set up in the film that isn't used to its full potential.
Not at all.
That I think could have added a lot of drama and like infighting, which is definitely what the movie is surrounding for a good majority of the film.
Yeah.
So I think that was underutilized. And I also think that like the location too, because most of the film takes place in just a single location, and there's a reason for that. And I think that could have also played more into like adding tension and suspense and just a lot of other various things like throughout, but it wasn't. So I think that's kind of a missed opportunity.
This whole film is a missed opportunity because you have good world building, you have a good premise, you have poor execution, kind of right and left. There are so many things that are set up in here that do not live up to their full potential at all. There are so many character moments. There's so many character plot points that never really go anywhere. And I feel like there's such a fumbling of the material in here that could have made this way more of a statement and way more intelligent and gotten your point across better. Anybody who thinks that film hasn't always had a political message, or that film hasn't always been a product of its time and its environment and the political powers that be, whether it's the president or, you know, racial tensions within the street because of, segregation, or because of acts of violence or police brutality or whatever. Film has always been a product of its environment. How could it not be? Where artists were inspired by life, right? So that anybody who talks about that kind of stuff now, it's just because we live in very hyper partisan times where everyone is on a team. No, I'm on the right, I'm on the left, and anything that says bad about this side or that side is just political propaganda. Nonsense. Pure nonsense. This has always been the case. People just think that it isn't handled as intelligently these days, and I actually agree with that here. I think that the message, while I can agree with some of its points, I don't think that it gets anywhere near the level that it's going for. And this feels like it's a rookie mistake. I feel like this is been put in the hands of a director that doesn't know how to handle this material yet. Man, there are so many things I could pick apart in this on why the hell did you do this? Why is this like that?
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. There's so many things that happen that you're like, ooh, that could be really interesting. Like, for instance, they give them these papers that could add so much drama to the movie, and they just don't at all.
Basically, every character is, like, very unlikable, especially by the end. I don't know if it's always necessary to have, like, a character that, like, you can relate to, but it definitely helps, and I think in a movie like this, especially, in a story like this, it's good to have someone that, like, the audience, and, like, there sort of is someone that you're, like, you know, behind and, like, backing. It just doesn't end up being that in the end.
The end of this movie, I don't care what political side you fall on, the ending of this movie is just going to piss you off. And because the journey you go on and the conclusion that you're given is so unsatisfactory, it's actually kind of maddening. Maybe that's the point, but I don't give a shit, because I feel like that's not the end this movie should have. You know, fuck all the like, oh, you're just upset because it didn't go the way you want it to. No, I don't think it's good storytelling. I think the ending of this doesn't actually line up with the story that was told. As I said, that's why I was so upset in the end. It's like, why would this character agree to that or this or that when this happened and that happened? Like, that just doesn't, that completely blows their arc as a character and others. Right? And you can then look at every character and say, well, they got to this point, and then this is where we're at. And there are things that are maddening that I do think are good and do play to the story well, but most other things I'm like, no, absolutely not. So this was a very frustrating watch, and I think that even the people who agree with the message are going to be off-put by, the conclusion especially, but most of the second half of the film. The first half of the film, I was fairly into it. And then once we get to the action, once we get to the central point of the film and we get into that part of the runtime, that's where I started checking out more and more.
Yeah.
That's where I kept being like, what? Why? What? Aw, shit, no. And I just kept getting more and more disconnected from the film. And that's as somebody who was fully into the material, who didn't have some kind of like political bias where I was like, oh, you're just trying to, gaslight me, or you're just trying whatever. Like, I don't have that. And you still lost me heavily. Yeah. So I just don't see who this is going to appeal to outside of a very small group. So this will have its audience, as every film does, but I don't think that audience is going to be very big.
I don't either.
And I don't know. We'll see. But I'm going to assume it's going to immediately divide half the people who watch it, and they're going to hate it instantly. They're going to see it as propaganda. And then the people who do stick around, or who do give it the chance, who are on the political spectrum that this falls in line with, they're going to be like us. By the end, they're going to be like, what the fuck? That's really all I got to say about it. Everyone is super unlikable. and it makes for a very frustrating and unsatisfying watch.
Yeah.
So, not really a recommendation. And
No.
that's a shame because I was really looking forward to it. But David Cronenberg does have a film coming out, The Shrouds. That one looks cool. I wasn't a huge fan of his last one, but I have loved a lot of his films throughout the year. So I'm always going to give him a shot. I like that he takes swings. And this new one, from the imagery we've seen, could be something unique and interesting and a return to form. We shall see. But as of right now, Caitlin is not the best filmmaker in the family. But very much looking forward to what Brandon does next, because I've been a big fan of his last 2 movies. All right, so that's that. Let us know if you watch it, and we'll see you in the comments.